Welcome, Rotarians. Welcome, Rotarians. It's been a while since I've been up here and forgot how to push the right button. So welcome to the December 13th meeting. I am third string today, but hope you're here and ready for a great meeting. We'll kick off really quick and have the famous Pete Enwald lead us in Song and Pledge.
Hey, so a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to join him in a 401k. Testing. Yeah, testing, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Bill. A friend of mine asked me if I wanted to join him in a 401k. And I told him I didn't think I could run that far. And for Christmas, Mrs. Claus and Santa were looking up into the sky on Christmas Eve, and she said, "Looks like rain, dear." All right, so we didn't get to do it last week, but this week we're going to sing Jingle Bells. So you need something to cling, and it's hard to find stuff to cling around here. But if you take 2 spoons, you can sort of do it, or you can tap it on your phone. So if you get one of your utensils and your phone or something, and keys, that's good. We're going to sing Jingle Bells. Maestro. Through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Ha, 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 bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. A day or so ago, I thought I'd take a ride, and soon Miss Fanny Bright was seated by my side. A horse was lank and lame, misfortune was his lot. He got into a drifted bank and we got upside. Oh, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. That second verse is dedicated to Charlie Page. Okay, so now we're gonna, would you join me in pledging allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was looking at Laurie and he was laughing and I couldn't help but think that went from a mini sermon to full-blown 3 points in a poem, right? Laurie Vidal with our invocation.
You know, sometimes you want to have something special and sometimes you don't feel it. And so Charles Allen, good friend, said there are some amazing Rotarian invocations online. And so I am sharing one that I think is very fitting for the season. Let's join our hearts in prayer. Gracious eternal God, this is the season of light, light from the festive glow of the menorah, warmth from the Yule log fire, radiant beams from the tender face of the babe born in Bethlehem. In this, literally, the darkest of months, we give thanks for the light you bring to humankind. We give thanks for the light this Rotary Club has shed throughout its long history on so many others, but here at home and both here at home and throughout the world. We ask that we be nourished by this food today, the fellowship, and the reflection on our past, and energized to convey your perpetual light forward into the future. In your holy name, I pray. Amen.
All right, thank you, Lori. You may be seated. If you are here with a guest, please remain standing. Jason Shank will make his way around to allow you to introduce your guest, or if you're a visiting Rotarian. Or we actually have Don Bugus. Oh, nope, Jason, sorry. They both have a mic.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. I just realized I was in a little bit of trouble. I have Lori Vidal here, which is the founding member of my church, and I have the current pastor of the church. And I believe they're taking notes, so I might not be here next week. It is my privilege to introduce the pastor of Faith Presbyterian Church, Kevin Nelson.
Welcome.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce a guest. Her name is Penny, and she is from India and visiting us, and she was at our seafood festival the other night.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I have my son, Grant, and I also have my friend Caroline from undergrad, who was a student of Dr. Colburn's, as was I at the Graham Center. So it all comes home for us.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. It's my pleasure to introduce Dwayne Bush, who is a commercial bank manager with Seacoast. Will be joining us today.
Welcome.
It's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Adele Graham, who is now living in Gainesville at Oak-Hammock. Her husband, Senator Bob Graham, is there, and we're so fortunate to have them in Gainesville. And I'm glad she's here with us today.
Welcome to each and every one of you. Very nice to have you today with us. We have several announcements. Kicking off is Elena Frazier with a Rotary auction wrap-up, I believe. Richard, that's a change. Richard.
Yeah, Richard Elena. Just wanted to tell everybody how amazingly successful the auction was. Thanks to all of you. We raised more than, in the auction itself, more than $26,000, which with the match is more than $52,000. It's an amazing, amazing thing. What a great club. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all, and thank you, Richard, for your dedication, and Elena as well, and all the committee. Next up, Dwight McKee with a seafood spectacular. I had Lisa down, but I see she's on Zoom.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. My name's Dwight, and I want to thank everybody for coming out to the Seafood Spectacular last Thursday. It was a huge success. I believe everybody got stone crab, so that was a win-win. The beer was flowing, the wine was pouring, everybody was having a great time. For those of you that volunteered beforehand and during the event, you know who you are. I thank you very much. Couldn't have done it without you. All the Gainesville clubs participated and supported, and that was a wonderful thing. Also want to thank Northwest Seafood, Embers Restaurant, Hills Catering. They all participated in providing great seafood, spectacular food. We had a wonderful time, and I believe we had approximately 600 plus people show up, so it was a wonderful, wonderful event. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great night. It definitely was. Now, if Helen Gilstrom will come with a Grateful Rotarian announcement.
While we're on the subject of food, we are collecting again for Bread of the Mighty Food Bank. You know, we always love cash. If you want to buy things, I will get the list out this week. You know, you could decorate a box. I'm sure you all have an Amazon box in your garage. Good activity for kids and grandkids. Go find some things in the grocery store. What I spent on groceries was less than I'm going to pay for an hour of jumping up and down at that trampoline place with the grandkids. So, you know, it would be good for us to do both of it. Anyhow, that's just food for thought. We're going to be here through January. The purpose of this is not to provide holiday food to the food bank, but to kind of come in January when things are a little bit depleted, and we will have something to give to them. We were recommended from our speaker from the corner drugstore. If you have these kind of toiletries from your travels, you know, the hotels, that kind of stuff, bring them in, because, you know, they have kids, teenagers who spend the night with them. They could use a shower, and they would appreciate that. And this kind of defrays some of their costs. So we're going to have a box out here. Just bring them in next 4 weeks. Clean out your drawers. A lot of you clean out stuff the first of the year. We'll take them. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you all who have and will contribute to that great cause. Now, Rotary Holiday Party Update from Linda Reinhardt.
All right, it's time to get into the holiday season. Next week, instead of our usual meeting, we're going to have our holiday party during our lunch. We are asking, there are sign-up sheets on the table. Family is invited, so please let us know if you're going to be here and if you're going to be bringing any guests so that we can order food appropriately. We will have a special musical guest as well as appearance by Santa Claus. Also, for those of you that are on Zoom, we will not be doing Zoom next week, so to give the camera crew a holiday break, and also because there's not going to be any program, it's just going to be pure fellowship. So for those of you that are on Zoom, we do invite you to join us in person. Please, you can either email me or you can type it in the chat so that we know that you're coming, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week and having some wonderful fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Now, John Thomas with a Wild Game Feast update.
Good afternoon. It's hard to believe it's almost that time again for another Wild Game Feast, which will be on March 2nd. Just real quick, sponsorship packages are on your table in case you need to make a donation before the end of the year for tax purposes. We would appreciate that. Dig real deep. Also on January 10th, the 3 recipients, the Child Advocacy Center, PACE, and Grace Pharmacy will be here to give us a little preview about their projects. Thank you.
Thank you, JT. Yes, you can pay this year, you can pay next year. There will be many opportunities to sponsor a great event. And now, Ryan Thompson with a Rotary board member vote.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Hold your applause. On your table are slips for the board of director candidates. If those candidates would please stand to be recognized. Rennie Henderson, Patrice Boyce, Jane Muraski, Frank Mason, Kim Naoni, Billy Dodd, and David Nicholson. So if you could, please vote for 5. Just leave your, thank you all, you may be seated. If you could just leave your slips in the middle of the table, we'll collect them after the meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes, those of you on Zoom, you should be seeing an electronic vote option there that you can select. Those in the crowd, you can see that option as well, but you shall please use the paper ballot. All right, now we have the honor of a craft talk from a new Rotarian, Ernest Hall.
First mistake that was made was telling a preacher he's got to get up and do this in 3 minutes. Well, I said, well, I'll put some notes down. Normally, a sheet like this, I can preach for about 45 minutes. But we won't do that this morning. I won't bore you. My wife, Debbie, and I are the new commanding officers here in town. And as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from around here. Born and bred in Freeport, New York. I got to the South as quick as we could. Started out in little Sanford, Florida, when Debbie and I moved here in 1986. Have been a lifelong Salvationist, working with the Salvation Army as an employee for years. But I started feeling a special calling, Debbie and I, while we were there in Sanford, Florida, to do something more. So we knew what the calling was. God was calling us to be ministers, which is really the first role of a Salvation Army officer, and to serve our communities in need. So we answered the call. In 1997, we applied for the College for Officer Training and spent 2 years in the College for Officer Training. And in 1997, we went into training. And in 2 years, in 2000, June 2nd of 2000, Debbie and I were commissioned and ordained as Salvation Army officers to little Altus, Oklahoma, a tiny little burg not many people knew about. Not even I knew about that little place, but we left our hearts in that very first appointment. But from Altus, Oklahoma, we went to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Then we came back to Ardmore, Oklahoma, to Lawton, Oklahoma, to Enid, Oklahoma, to New Orleans Area Command, to Amarillo, Texas, and now here in Little Gainesville. We've been serving God and the Salvation Army for the past 23 years, and there's nothing else in my life that I could see my wife and I doing than serving our community. We're wonderfully blessed to be here. We fully believe we're retiring from Gainesville because it's 3.5 years to our retirement. So we're going to give the best 3.5 years of our life to this community and to this club as I grow here as a Rotarian in your club. So thank you for welcoming this New Yorker and my humor, my dry humor. I could go on. There's probably more on there, but I'll leave that with you. God bless.
Real quickly, Ernest, I want to welcome you to Gainesville and thank you for your work with the Salvation Army. That's so important. And I do have a plaque that's in my trunk right now. So I will give that to you for doing your craft talk. And now you're an active member of the club, and we welcome you. Thank you, Ernest.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here at the Cade today. And for those on Zoom, welcome as well. I have a little housekeeping to do first. Helen Kornblum, if you could please stand for a moment. Helen has graciously offered to take photos for anyone who wants to have new photo or put one in if they don't have one in the DAC-DB system, which is our database system. So Helen's here this week, next week, and if you catch her any week she's here, she's happy to do that. So thank you, Helen. Also, at last week's meeting, I failed to thank the Hubbles, Gordon and Kate, for a wonderful event they hosted at their home. It's an annual sing-along. Haven't had it for a few years. This is the first year back, and we hope to carry on that tradition again next year. So Gordon and Kate, thank you so much for doing that. At last night's, well, actually, before I do that, let me call up the birthdays. I'm going to try to make this fast. So if you could move quickly and bring your money up to the table where David is. We have some people that have birthdays. Some are here. If you're here, please bring your money up. Hawes Adams, Phil Ankrum, Keith Balcom. I saw Keith here. John Bruckner, Yvette Carter, John Cousins. I saw John. Jim Craig, Steve Elder. Steve, I saw you here. Bring up your money. Hugh Eubank, which is Wes's brother, who's not here today. Ian Fletcher, Wilbur Holloway, Courtney Pache, TJ's wife. She's at work today because somebody's got to bring home the bacon. Brendan Shortley, thank you, sir. Anne-Marie Rogers, thanks, man. Kent Walker, Naomi Williams, I saw Naomi, and Scott Winsler. Let's all wish them a happy birthday and give them a little song. If you'll sing along with me, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Rotarians, happy birthday to you. Many more. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. So I'm happy to announce at last night's board meeting, we voted in 4 new members to our club, And if they're here, if they would please stand, Byron Flagg, Iffy, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to get your last name right, Iffy, but please stand. Ben Stone and Teresa Wilson. Okay, as I mentioned last week, last couple of weeks, I will be sending out an email that will be talking about the do-goodery money. You'll be getting that email. It'll be self-explanatory. Please read that, and it's a way for our club to give to the community. So please take a look at that. Also, really quickly, Seafood Spectacular, Bill and Randy Caton, would you please come up here for a moment, real quick? You know, it's fun to work out there because you're working alongside fellow Rotarians, and you're also getting to greet the guests that come to the events. But when you're back there washing dishes, you're out of the limelight. You're not the center of attention. You're there because you enjoy doing the work of Rotary and contributing, even if it's selfless. So these two gentlemen, they were back there and they took turns, and they were the team that did all the washing that night. So I want to honor them. All right, scrub brushes on the more sponges and scrub brushes. Yeah, I saw that, Randy. But they were great. I mean, there's so many people I could thank, that we all could thank, but they stood out in my mind. And I forgot to give them their little cards. Okay. So anyway, now I'd like to bring up the show. TJ Pache, you will be making the introduction of our speaker today. Come on up, TJ.
Do you have my script?
Your script?
No, there's no script. Oh dear. Hi everybody. I am super excited to introduce Dr. Steve Noll, who's an instructional professor in the Department of History at the University of Florida. For anybody who has gone to the University of Florida in the last 30 years, they know that Dr. Noll is a beloved instructor at the university. So we're very lucky to have him talking about his newest book, Writing for the Public Good, which is a compilation of essays from both Dr. David Colburn, who's a former provost at the University of Florida, as well as former governor and U.S. Senator Bob Graham, two-term governor, three-term senator, both very accomplished men, but for anybody who has met either of them, both men of integrity and really people that everybody can learn a lot from. So without further ado, another person we can learn a lot from, Dr. Noll.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great food. Thank you very much. And please turn your cell phones off. My students know that the only phone that's allowed to ring during my lectures is my phone, because they know it's probably the roofers or the plumbers, and now the people who are fixing the kitchen are a constant presence in the life of both my wife and myself. It's both a pleasure and a privilege to be here this lunch hour. Many of you who might know me, Michael Pellet, have never seen me in a tie. I'm wearing one today to commemorate the real authors of this book, the late Dr. David Colburn and Senator Governor Bob Graham, who could not be here today. It's an honor for me to share this book with these two Floridians, and if you look closely, you'll see that I'm wearing a Florida tie. And I guess in keeping with the seafood theme, it's got Florida seafood all over it. So hopefully no one will eat my tie too. That's and fits nicely with the cover of the book called Writing for the Public Good. And it's nice, really nice, to finally speak to an audience in person as the world opens up after 2 years of just Zooming. And I guess we're on Zoom too. With somebody's cat I see on there, so that's very nice. I'd like to take the opportunity for the Rotary Club to making this talk possible, and also for the people who helped with the book, particularly Florida Humanities. And if you guys aren't a member of Florida Humanities, please go to floridahumanities.org and join. They're a great organization that helps push along the humanities in the state of Florida, and they've been very helpful to both me and also to David and to Bob Graham as well. And to the Bob Graham Center at UF, those people who are instrumental in helping with the book as well, and to the folks at the University of Florida Press, who were there from the beginning and who put the book together in the middle of the pandemic, which is a real problem. But also especially to my wife Beverly and to the families of David Colburn and Bob Graham. Their wives are both here, and so without them, this book would never have come to fruition. I was honored in the fall of 2019 when Marion, David Colburn's wife, asked me to bring this collection of op-ed pieces to publication. David had just untimely passed away, and I felt there was no better way to honor my good friend and mentor, David, than by getting his and Bob Graham's newspaper pieces out in book form. I'd known David for almost 40 years, first as a graduate advisor to me, then as my mentor, then as a close friend. But my best association with David were on the basketball court. Every Friday, history faculty and grad students would meet at the late Diamond Village UF courts near Archer Road, now bulldozed over for Shans, of course, like everything else, right? To shoot hoops and to shoot the shit. From that interaction, David became someone who could say things to me that no one else, except for my wife, can say, like, "No, when are you gonna get a haircut?" Well, David, I do get them, but I always tell him in response, unlike tattoos, David, when I cut my hair, it'll grow back. And whenever I went over to the Graham Center where he was the director, our conversation would always end with his directive: "No, you need to write a good biography of Bob Graham. There hasn't been one, but you can do it." I always demurred as my plate was full with other responsibilities. But David, I finally wrote the book, not as a conventional biography of Governor Graham, but as an edited volume of his words, combined with the words of you, David Colburn, told through their op-ed pieces, demonstrating their clarity, their vision, and their wisdom. I met Governor Graham in a very different way than I met David. And, you know, I have a hard time figuring out what to call him. Is he Senator Graham? Is he Governor Graham? Is he Senator Governor Graham? I'll just call him Bob, okay? I got to know him before I actually met him in person when Ann Henderson was the director of the Graham Center. Under her auspices and that of Carl Van Ness, who was just retired as the UF archivist, I spent a summer in Smathers Library, no air conditioning, organizing and categorizing boxes and boxes of Bob Graham's papers in anticipation of their transfer from his home in Miami Lakes to the archives at UF Special Collections. You get to know someone very well by examining their papers. And in between the vast numbers of plane tickets, boarding passes, restaurant receipts, and other ephemera were the real meat of the Graham papers. Hundreds of letters to and from constituents about governmental matters large and small. They reveal much about Governor Graham as a man and as a senator. His governor papers are already in Tallahassee and not part of this treasure trove of documents, but they reveal a lot about the governor's decency, his thoroughness, and his respect for the people he represented. All things which come out in the op-ed pieces in this book. I finally got to meet him in person when Ann Henderson arranged for him to speak to my Florida history class, a tradition that continued into David Colburn's tenure as director of the center. My students loved him coming to talk to my class. A, they didn't have to listen to me lecture for a day, and B, how often do you get a 2-term governor and 3-term senator speak to you in a regular class setting? Every year he talked about something different, but the best talk he gave was when he discussed his father, Ernest Cap Graham, a Florida state senator and dairy farmer from Dade County. Students were riveted as he explained how Cap sponsored legislation in 1937 to end the Florida poll tax and the political reasons for doing so. His yearly visits were one of the highlights of the class and of my teaching career. So these two men, one a respected teacher, author, college administrator, and director of the Graham Center, the other a towering figure in state and national politics, and the person for whom the eponymous center was named, decided to publish a book of their newspaper pieces collected over the past 30 years. They ran this idea past the director of the University Press of Florida, and she agreed that the press would publish the book. Who wouldn't want to publish a collection of essays written by these influential Florida notables? With a promise to publish, they began to choose pieces and organize them by topic. They were in the middle of this process when David unexpectedly died in September 2019. I then came on board and could see the direction of their organizational structure and the categories they developed, but had to grapple with the fact that the articles they chose were voluminous in number and all in non-digital form. Some original newspaper pages, some Xerox copies, many with no dates or newspaper attribution. A highlight of this process was receiving a box of these articles from David's daughter, Margaret, in the pouring rain, and having to get there and make sure the rain didn't destroy the pieces. After choosing the pieces that I thought were the best from the many they had selected, reorganizing them through their categories in mind, and spending way too much time using newspapers.com to track down the articles which had no dates or newspaper names, I was ready to get the press involved with digitizing the articles to put them into publishable form. Now come the hard part, trying to provide coherent connections between the articles and the sections, as well as writing an introduction to the book that would provide context and nuance to the work of these two influential authors. This was made more difficult by the fact that I knew my parts of this broader work had to match the depth, clarity, and passion exemplified by David and Bob through their op-ed pieces. What really struck me, not only about the pieces chosen for the book, but also for those many that were left on the cutting room floor, and now I know what Steven Spielberg goes through, was the consistency of the authors, of both authors over time, combined with their uncanny ability to change over time. Consistent, strong, persuasive writing from beginning to end, and an ability to see things in the context of their time period make these pieces both easy to read and important to digest. These pieces are not the work of dedicated ideologues, but rather thoughtful commentaries on our current situation. Everywhere throughout these works, the reader can find nuggets that speak to the world around us. Here's just one example from 2008, could have been written today, when Bob Graham wrote, "Democracy," quoting, "democracy does not automatically renew itself in each generation." Wow, that could have and should have been written yesterday. The op-ed pieces in this book were penned during a time span of 28 years, from 1991 to 2019. Since both writers are Floridians, although David would maintain he's still a New Englander, most of these articles come from Florida newspapers. The vast majority of pieces speak to Florida topics, yet they examine issues that stretch far back beyond 1991 and speak to subjects that will affect Floridians far into the future. Chief among them is the racial divide in this state. Both Colburn and Graham are keenly aware of Florida's history of racial subordination and white supremacy, and are not shy about discussing the legacy of that past in relation to the present. The articles on this topic seem increasingly perceptive at a time when discussions on these themes are discouraged, disparaged, and even banned. Listen to David Colburn's words in an article written for the Gainesville Sun in February 2014 for Black History Month. It sounds like he could be speaking today. Now, got to get out the glasses, folks. Sorry. Got to find the pages, right? Here he's talking about Rosewood and St. Augustine. The events at Rosewood during the first week of January 1923, it'll be the 100th anniversary next month, highlight the pervasiveness and horrific consequences of racism in Florida. The entire black community was destroyed following an allegation of rape against a black man who was never identified. Several residents were also murdered by white mobs, and others were driven from their property forever. In reflecting on these developments and subsequent life, one resident observed, "Nothing was the same after Rosewood." As we celebrate Black History Month, we need to remember that Florida's place in the nation prior to 1964 was circumscribed by racism and segregation policies that crippled its advancement and oppressed an entire race of people. It took the courageous actions of individuals in Rosewood and St. Augustine to expose this and to help secure the nation's democracy for all its people. The authors also examined the state's environmental woes. Way back in 2006, Bob Graham warned about the dangers of global warming and sea level rise. Florida, with more at risk than any other state from global warming, should be in the lead. State and local building codes and code enforcement needs to be re-examined, strengthened when they are found to be inadequate, and enforced to withstand the intensity of the hurricanes we will be facing. Most of the homes and buildings we'll be using in the next 20 years are already built. The federal government should stop the practice of using taxpayers' money to subsidize the true cost of coastal development. Cheap federal flood insurance law makes development in risky coastal areas financially possible. These structures have also contributed to increased wind insurance rates, as it is exactly these coastal structures which are the most exposed to wind as well as flood water. As the insurance companies become more compartmentalized in their underwriting, the federal government has a responsibility to assist those regions of America that are more vulnerable to the ravages of hurricanes. And guess what the legislature is talking about as we speak? Insurance. insurance. 12 years later, David Colburn reiterated these ideas. Growth has been Florida's grand paradox for all of the state's modern history, creating prosperity and opportunity as well as ecological injury that threatens the quality of life that drew us here in the first place. And every modern Florida governor has confronted growth-related challenges with varying degrees of success. Contrasting earlier eras, today's growth pressures are spread throughout much of the peninsula and are already amplified by climate change. Florida stands to lose more homes and more real estate value to sea rise than any other state in the nation. Hurricane Michael underscored Florida's vulnerability to the weather extremes climate scientists predict will become more frequent with warming. These threats mean Florida's interior counties could see unprecedented growth as more coastal dwellers migrate inland. And Bob Graham tied the past to the present and the future when in 2014 he talked about the degradation of Florida's iconic springs, so important to us right here in north central Florida. Now, let's come back to 2014, which is when he wrote this. Florida has a population of more than 19 million, and the dire problems facing our waters from the Panhandle to the Keys have only gotten worse. Many of Florida's iconic springs still do not have basic protection. Springs are dying from too little flow and too many nutrients. Rivers are covered in algae mats, and estuaries and coastal waters are suffering staggering losses of marine life and birds. Now, when our waters need strong environmental protection the most, we no longer have them. Though the book emphasizes Florida subjects, many of the last op-ed pieces deal with national issues, focusing on U.S. foreign policy and the safety of all Americans. This represents the movement of Bob Graham from Florida governor to a member of the U.S. Senate, where he served as chair of both the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Joint Congressional Investigation into Intelligence surrounding the attacks of 9/11. These last pieces give the book relevance to not only Floridians, but all Americans interested in our nation's place in a changing and dangerous world. Graham was especially prescient regarding the nation's vulnerability to pandemics. He wrote this in 2009, okay? Think about this. That's a long time ago. I think it is anyway. Unfortunately, we are not nearly as prepared, I can get rid of these, to respond to any infectious disease besides influenza, whether sent from Mother Nature or as part of a deliberate attack. No one doubts that new diseases will emerge and that they could be a health risk to many Americans and even a threat to national security. The scenarios are easy to anticipate. An entirely new virus could take the world by storm, as SARS nearly did in 2003. Treatment for old plagues could become ineffective as antibiotic resistance makes those drugs we have today useless. What do we do if they do attack? The answer is preparation. Start by adequately funding the office within the Department of Health and Human Services charged with developing the medicines we will need in a public health crisis. The office is the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority created in 2006. Its mission is to make sure that the nation has the right drugs and medical countermeasures, not only for the flu, but for emerging pathogens, as well as chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear public health threats. The team there has already hired top talent, and is working effectively with the private sector. However, they've received little funding for the rest of their mission. It's time to correct that. As John F. Kennedy said, and this is Graham quoting former President Kennedy, the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. Now, before the next public health emergency, is the time to invest in our nation's ability to respond to a public health emergency so that we will have the tools we need to prevent, contain, and treat disease. These examples are but a few of the many gems that populate this book. Other sections focus on education and its value, gubernatorial leadership, and the growing importance of Florida in both region and nation. And like the manatee and the Florida panther, the newspaper op-ed is an endangered species, beset by declining newspaper circulation, by alternative forms of news dissemination like Twitter and podcasts, and by a generation of young people addicted to their smartphones. It may not live in its current form much longer. In my larger introduction to the entire volume, I explain the history of this type of writing and how it became a critical and crucial part of the democratic process in this country, as the op-ed form provides a focus on one thing: the importance of an informed, involved, and diverse citizenry. And this is reading from my writings, not nearly as good as their writing, but and yet Graham and Colburn kept writing op-eds as well, month after month, year after year. Why? Why? Because for them, the writing of op-eds mattered, as those articles provided historical depth and complexity to the world in which we currently live. If a good op-ed always has tension, the work of Graham and Colburn fit that bill exactly. Their writing informs, elucidates, and challenges. The pieces in this book are the best of their work. They speak to our collective past, our problematic present, and a future filled with both hope and concern. As David Colburn wrote in 1996, the way Florida harmonizes our diversity, builds a sense of community, and governs itself in the 21st century is what stimulates so much interest in this state. For as Florida goes in the 21st century, many political observers believe so will the nation. Among the greatest takeaways from writings of Graham and Colburn is their plea for more reasonable discourse in the public sphere and a greater emphasis on improving education at all levels. That includes the importance of teaching civic literacy in the public schools. Governor Graham said it best when he wrote in 2008 that, quote, "If we want future generations of Americans to sustain our democracy, we must educate them to be informed, skilled, and engaged citizens." 5 years later, David Colburn attacked, quote, "legislative mandates," I'm not going to say a word, which originate in the premise that we cannot trust teachers to do the right thing. Instead, he argues it would be wise and appropriate if policymakers started from a different place, one of trusting teachers. In these times, the words of both authors resonate deeply. Governor Graham did not stop writing op-ed pieces with the development of this book. Even the pandemic could not prevent him from expressing his views about Florida and its problems and promise. A year ago, he published an op-ed piece in the Tampa Bay Times, authored in conjunction with his friend and fellow environmental advocate, Jimmy Buffett. Written in reaction to the unprecedented number of manatee deaths in 2001, Graham concluded that the only way to reverse these devastating consequences of too much nutrient pollution in our waterways is for citizens to demand that their local, state, and federal leaders make cleaning up these waterways a top mutual priority. Unless we stop the excess nutrient pollution from making its ways into our bays, lagoons, and rivers, our state will not be fit for man and manatee alike. End quote. Let us hope that Governor Graham will continue to pen pieces like this so that in the future we can have another volume like this one. Let me end with some words I wrote for the introduction. These articles show the broad range of interests David and Bob showed in a wide range of topics, from race relations to state and national politics, from environmental concerns to education, from foreign policies to natural and human-made disasters. The contemporaneous nature of the op-eds is striking. Articles written 10, 20, or even 30 years ago speak to hot-button issues that resonate in today's news. Taken together, the collective body of work by two giants in their respective fields is a fitting coda to their public lives. At a time like now, when learned, temperate discourse, especially from our elected leaders, is in short supply, we can turn to the writings of David Colburn and Governor Bob Graham to show us the way for a better future. Thank you. Questions? Any questions? Yes, you can buy the book.
Professor Noll, as you know, the Gainesville Sun has ended its issues section, and which contained op-eds.
Yep.
What is your reaction to that?
I should be getting money for saying that that was going to happen, I think. No, I think it's terrible. I think that the public forum is gone. You know, people have no place to express their opinions or to read learned opinions except online from sound bites. So I think it is exemplified, an exemplary of what's going on around the nation. You know, it's not just the Gainesville Sun, and I'm assuming that within 5 years there will be no more hard copy of the Gainesville Sun or of many other local newspapers, which is really horrible because they are our eyes and ears to what's going on at the local level. So it's pretty depressing. Also, it's tough to look at the computer screen when you're trying to eat your breakfast too. That's a big, nice to have the newspaper there, but I'm an old guy, so. Any other questions? Yes.
So with all that said, what is the future of op-ed? I mean, how are we going?
The future of op-ed is online. The future of op-ed, and you know, I think younger people will say it's just an evolving process that, you know, you can read the voices of different people, and you know, local things like Main Street News has taken the place of the Gainesville Sun, which is actually a nice way to look at the material. So I think to be less sad about what's going on, I think it's evolving into new things that may take its place. And you know, when our children or grandchildren are grown up, those new places will be considered the norm. So again, you know, for us, it's sad, but for younger people, I think that they are finding new ways to have the news disseminated, and that may be more inclusive. You know, blogs, you know, you don't have to be a op-ed writer, you know, you can write your own blog, but then the problem with that, of course, is there's no vetting of that process. Somebody can claim to be an expert and, you know, be like that Christmas tree back there, can't do anything but look pretty, you know, so.
So I know a number of the op-eds talk about Florida's growth and how it impacts Floridian identity, and that growth isn't slowing down. So I was curious to your thoughts about what you think the identity of the state will look like in the next 5-10 years.
It's not slowing down, or it is it?
It's not.
Oh, it's not slowing down. I think there's a serious problem because the things that people come to Florida for, and our friend talked about that, you know, Florida's a very wonderful place to come to. It's beautiful, it's warm, it's exciting, it's got oceans, it's got springs, it's got rivers, it's got animals that are not found anywhere else, and you know, that's why people want to come here, but we are loving it to death. And so with everybody here, certainly the amount of open land is being reduced, the quality of our water is being reduced, and also, you know, that elephant or maybe that manatee in the room, climate change, sea level rise is certainly impacting those people who live on the coast. You know, I know someone who's living in Fort Myers who's moving. You know, I can't be near here, I've already been hit. I know someone in St. Augustine who's moving, the hurricane. And so where are they moving to? Inland. They're moving here, right? So, you know, the good thing is with sea level rise, Gainesville may be waterfront property in 20 years, and you know, and our land values will go up so much, it'll be wonderful, right? But I think, you know, we have to figure out the kind of equilibrium between loving the state and loving it too much.
Thank you, Dr. Noll, and please stay. I want to thank you for sharing the book that you edited and compiled. It was wonderful. I have a copy when you spoke to the Matheson, and in sharing the time with us to share the writings of these two inspiring and not only inspirational, but also men of integrity. So, and their public service. So on behalf of the Rotary Club of Gainesville, I'd like to present you with this document stating that we are going to be giving a cash amount to the CADE in your honor to go to their scholarship fund for children that are at risk that do not get served in all the communities. But so this is a great opportunity for them to attend on your behalf. So thank you. You're very welcome, and thank you for taking your time to share with us today. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, Eric Goday, I don't know if you saw this, Linda Reinhardt brought to my attention that Eric Goday received the first annual Win Phillips Town and Gown Relations Award, and that's where the connection between the city and the university, someone that helps to facilitate that. And so, sorry Eric couldn't be here today, but we'll acknowledge that when we see him next time as well. So thank you everyone for attending. I look forward to seeing you next week when our President-elect, Linda Reinhardt, will be hosting the holiday party as she spoke earlier. So make sure you sign up so that we get enough food for everyone that's going to be attending. Okay, quote of the day. To give real service, you must add something which cannot be bought or measured, and that with money, and that is sincerity and integrity. And I think these two men exemplify that. Douglas Adams. So, Rotary raffle today, last three digits, 203, and with that, our meeting's adjourned.